just joining us, please allow me to say one more time, welcome to Global Teleclass. Thanks so much for being here tonight, folks. And you are here for tonight's webinar, Lose Weight Now, Here's How with Rob Sugar. And let me begin by asking you a question, folks. Are you trying to lose weight? Well, tonight you're going to discover a completely different approach to losing weight easier. As a matter of fact, this was seen on Oprah. And tonight you're going to learn the very same thing, how to change your relationship with food and naturally reduce your desire to overeat. You'll discover a simple technique to stop you from eating too much or eating the wrong types of food. You'll also find out tonight how to use the power of your subconscious mind to break through whatever is stopping you from losing weight permanently. So, if you're truly ready to lose weight more easily and never diet again, this is definitely the webinar for you. Now, as I mentioned just a moment ago, we are very excited to have Rob Sugar with us back here at Global Teleclass. In fact, Rob has been called North America's premier weight loss coach. He's actually joining us from Canada tonight. And Rob is a certified NLP practitioner, psychotherapist, and master weight loss coach and emotional eating expert. In fact, over the last 20 years, he has helped thousands of people, and his unique approach has been featured on TV, radio, newspapers, and magazines. As a matter of fact, a national magazine wrote about Rob and said, a passion and desire to help people feel sugar's quote-unquote powerful instinct with people. Through his gentle nature and what others consider a gift of understanding, sugar has a recognized ability to diagnose and resolve lifelong problems. And by the way, Rob is going to have some very important information for you at the end of tonight's call, so be sure to be listening for that. Also, as we were getting started, I was speaking with Corey Watson. She is here tonight also with Rob, and she's going to be helping him facilitate tonight's webinar. So tonight, Global Teleclass is very proud to present Corey Watson and Rob Sugar and his teleclass, Lose Weight Now, Here's How. Welcome to Global Teleclass, Rob.
Thanks so much, David. I appreciate that.
Hello, everyone. As David said, my name is Corey Watson, and I have the pleasure of facilitating this evening. So I just want to welcome you all. Sounds like from around the world, which is very exciting. And I want to start off by asking, does your weight make you feel uncomfortable? Have you ever lost weight and gained it back? So Rob, I understand that tonight you're going to show us a completely different approach to lose weight easier and end the frustration of dieting. It has to do with the subconscious mind, right?
That's right, Corey.
You're also going to teach us a lot of tips and techniques that people can start using right away. How did you get into weight loss coaching, Rob?
Well, Corey, I appreciate your questions. And for me, I started off as a very overweight child. Did a lot of dieting. I really understand the struggles that people have, and did a lot of different dieting programs. And as I got a little bit older, I got involved in the field of dieting and weight loss, and I started working for a number of different clinics, and I saw some patterns from clinic to clinic where people would lose weight, follow the program, gain it fast, drop out. I'd go from different clinics to different clinics, so I thought, perhaps there's another one. Began to realize that in the midst of my weight continuing to fluctuate, which didn't exactly impress people at the clinic, but in any event, I realized something was missing, and I decided I needed to go on a deeper level. So I returned to school and I studied psychotherapy, and in that model, I was taught a number of different types of techniques, and I had to do quite a bit of clinical work. So I used the people that I was working with in the weight loss centers and began to use them and see the results, and kept working and working with them, and quite amazed at how these particular techniques happen to really shift things and take the focus off of the diet and the eating and put it more on emotions and the mindset, so forth. So I began using these techniques and worked with over 5,000 people the last 20 years, and I continue to evolve and grow, and I really love this work, and here we are.
Thank you, Rob. That's a fascinating journey that you've just told us about. And I'm sure many people on the call can actually relate. People tend to get very discouraged because they have a hard time staying on track and sticking to a diet. They get frustrated because they lose some weight and gain it back over and over again. Can you tell us, Rob, why is it that most diets fail as a long term?
Well, Corey, it's a good question. Most diets and weight loss programs fail in the long term because people seldom understand the real psychological and emotional roots of their eating habits. So they're really relying on willpower or self-control, and that's difficult to maintain every minute of every day. We have specific thoughts and feelings in the subconscious mind that actually controls what we eat and our ability to lose weight. And scientific evidence has proven that the most effective way to lose weight permanently is to actually change our conscious and subconscious thoughts and feelings about food. Being overweight is really just a symptom. There's over 29 different reasons that people eat other than hunger or taste. And diets don't really deal with those things. Diets tend to fail in the long term. With all due respect to all the listeners, if dieting would have worked, you wouldn't be on this call. It's impossible to maintain a diet every day for the rest of your life. So the moment that we start a diet, we're really setting ourselves up to fail.
So with that being true, Rob, how do we determine what the underlying reasons are for our habits, and how do we identify the subconscious reasons that we are overweight?
Well, that's a good question, Corey. One of the processes that I use is called awareness mapping, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail of that a little bit later. But in a nutshell, what we want to do is to become aware in the moment of our habits by being able to recognize, am I really hungry in this moment? Am I aware that I'm eating too much? And if so, why am I doing this? What's the real benefit and payoff, other than the taste, of course, and if I'm hungry? So we start at a point of conscious awareness, and then through a process of questioning ourselves and getting more deeper and aware and noticing what's going on, we become more and more aware of what it is, and then there's a process to help us. We're going to work through that as the night progresses, and hopefully that will really clarify. Primarily, one of the biggest problems is the conflict. Your logical mind that might be telling you in a particular moment, I really shouldn't be eating this. And the other side of you, the emotional side or the subconscious side or whatever we want to call it, is basically saying, well, I'm going to just eat this now. So there's a conflict between both sides. Now, when we look at logic, the logical mind, is looking, well, how much weight do I want to lose? So take a moment all of the time. How much weight do you want to lose? Why do you want to lose the weight? What are the eating habits that are really affecting your weight? So these are logical things. And if we go a little step further, we have this conversation, which is mostly subconscious. I want to lose weight. I want to look better. I want to feel better about myself, better health, more energy. I don't have enough willpower. And there's many different things that our logic will run through. Now, on the other side, we have an emotional part of us. As I mentioned, there's 29 different reasons that people eat other than hunger. Now, some of them I've outlined here. Stress is a big one. People get bored or anxious, or they want some comfort, or they just sort of want to be able to do what they want, or reward, treat. The big one is instant gratification. So as we look at that, we see this real conflict between the left side of our brain, so to speak, the logic, and the right side, which is our emotion. Now, what we want to understand here is in any given moment, if we are about to eat, let's say, some cake or some chocolate, in that particular moment, there is obviously some form of a benefit that we are getting, whether it's to comfort ourselves or, treat ourselves or what have you. But the moment we bite into that cake, or even sometimes seconds before, there's some instant payoff. Now, if we look on the other side, in that same moment, when we're about to have that piece of chocolate or cake, and we decide not to have it, and we're standing on a scale, in that precise moment when we put the chocolate down, will our weight drop in that second? Absolutely not. Are we going to feel better about our body and how we look? No. Are we going to actually look any better? Will we have any more confidence? No. Will our health or our energy improve? Not at all. So what we recognize here is the benefits of not eating the food in the moment. There are none. The benefits of eating the food in the moment, there are plenty. So think about it logically. If there's no consequence in that moment to eat the chocolate, you're not going to look any differently. But there's all these wonderful payoffs, then why wouldn't we eat? Makes sense, right? So that's a conflict. Because diets say don't eat, but on some logical level, some part of us is saying, well, why not? It's not going to make a difference in this moment. I'll start again tomorrow or next week, and how many of you have done that before? And when you do that type of thing, you're actually creating a program in your mind through repetitious action. Anything that you do or think of over and over again becomes automatic subconscious program or habit. And so you turn into this automatic sort of mindless eating. Whenever we tell ourselves we shouldn't be doing it, we do it anyway. So that's a huge conflict. Now the other conflict says, our self-control or our willpower is telling us don't eat the food. But if food is doing all of these things for us, relieving stress or anxiousness or comforting us or what have you, if food does that, but our mind is saying don't have the food, then guess what? We are being deprived of all of these good things. And that's the diet model. The diet model just says, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat. Suck it up. That's what you have to do. It does not recognize that by removing that food, what you're doing is you're depriving yourself of the comfort of the instant gratification, all of the good things that you basically experience from the food. So it turns into a real conflict. So let's again look at, you're about to eat the cake. You take the food away, you take the positive experiences away, and you're left pretty well high and dry. So what are we going to do about this? The solution is to absolutely not deprive yourself, but to duplicate the same positive feelings that food gives you, whether it's comfort or what have you. And that's what we're going to look at shortly, some of the techniques to actually experience that good stuff, to get what food gives us. And when you do that, when you can create that place of instant feel-good, if you can learn how to relieve your stress, if you can deal with your anxiety, and any of the reasons that you're using food and create that good feeling, you know what happens? Your desire for food will just naturally drop. If you're able to experience all the good things that food gives you in some other manner, then you're not really as driven to eat. So that's the plan. Now, having said that, most of you have probably been using food for quite some time to satisfy more than just hunger. And when you do that over and over again, it becomes a subconscious pattern and a very, very strong habit. Now let me demonstrate a little bit more of what I mean here. Repetition creates habit. So most of you, I assume, are licensed drivers, and you drive on the right side of the road, and you've done it so many times that sometimes we get home or to a workplace without even knowing how we got there. We've done it so many times, made this right-hand turn, put our signal on, that it becomes unconscious, and it creates what's called a neural pathway in the brain. It's like a superhighway in the mind. And because you've probably been using food many times over the years to create some kind of a positive experience, it results in us having a lot of mindless eating. So what we want to do is to respect our neurological process and recognize, hey, this is how my mind actually works. And to change the pattern, okay? Changing the pattern would be identical to learning to drive on the left side of the road. Go to England and, yes, initially it might be a bit challenging, but there's one thing and one thing only that you need to do to succeed, and that is repetition. If you practice driving in England for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, and you do it a few times a week, what you're going to do is develop a new neural pathway for that. And you can't fail as long as you keep practicing a few minutes a day. And that's the same philosophy with the techniques that I teach people. Through repetition, even if it's a minute or 2 or 3 minutes, 5, 10 minutes a day, they develop a new pathway in the brain, which then automatically shifts behavior without the willpower, without all the discipline and so forth.
So Rob, what you're saying sounds very logical to me, but it almost sounds too good to be true. How am I going to make that link in the moment? So I'm really hoping that you can give us some tips and techniques.
Absolutely, Corey. Basically, as Dave was saying, what we're going to focus on today is how to change your relationship with food and to naturally reduce your desire to overeat. And we're going to look at the power of your mind to break through anything that's stopping you from losing weight permanently. So the first thing we want to look at is something called the possibility of your success. Now, what is your belief, each one of you that is listening, about you being successful? And to me, success is defined by losing all the weight that you want and keeping it off and never really having to diet again. So that's what success is. Now, if we look at that and say on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 means that will absolutely for sure you believe it will happen, and 0 means it's probably not going to happen. So that being said, on that same scale, how much do you actually believe that you will lose weight and keep it off? And that's the main thing here. That's success, keeping it off and never have to diet again. So 0 to 10, what do you think? What do you believe? Now here's an example. Let's say someone says, well, the chances of me being successful is 50-50. 50% yes, it'll happen for sure, and 50% I doubt it. Now that being said, do you believe that that belief could affect your results? The fact that you doubt that it will actually happen, do you think that has any impact whatsoever? Well, it's obvious. What begins to happen is sabotage. Sabotage is unconscious messages that we send to ourselves, like, why bother if I won't succeed? go back to that scenario where you're about to have some chocolate or, the extra slice of cake, and the logic pops up and says, well, you probably shouldn't be doing this. This unconscious message that says, I don't think I'm going to succeed, says, why bother? Why shouldn't I eat this cake in this moment if I'm not going to succeed anyways? So the belief system is absolutely critical. It's like the foundation of a house, okay? And that's what we're talking about, using the power of your mind. So what we want to do is we want to change your belief about success. And by doing so, you're going to behave differently. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we want to challenge your beliefs. So hypothetically, why would a person believe that it's 50-50 for success? Most of the people that I've worked with over the years, because of their belief about their past history, they failed in the past, and that's what they expect. But that's not necessarily how it has to be. Does the past have to equal the future? It doesn't. But we have to be very aware of what is our current belief. Where is that steering us? So that's a very critical thing to be aware of and to change. The next thing we want to look at is your self-perception. Again, another powerful concept here. This looks at how you see yourself, how you see your body and your weight. If we look at your thoughts, how you think determines what you do. And there's your actions. So what you do determines results. And obviously, the results you have will reinforce how you think. Okay? So let's look a little bit more closely at this. We've all heard of this fellow, Donald Trump, right? Now, this fellow has gone bankrupt many, many, many times. But every time he comes back on his feet, so to speak, he always goes back to that same level of wealth that is beyond most of ours. And why is that? Well, first of all, if we look at our model, his thoughts about himself is that he's wealthy. Very clear. Okay? Now, as a result of that, he will act like a wealthy person. He does his real estate, hotels, TV, and what have you. And the result of those actions is that he makes a lot of money. And having made this money, it simply reinforces how he sees himself. Very simple model. A lot of people feel that it's all about action. It is. However, what thoughts do we have? That's what controls our actions. So let's look a little further at this. What are your thoughts about your body and your weight? Are they positive or are they negative? So let's take a hypothetical thought. Somebody says to themselves, I am fat. The actions, therefore, are more likely to be that of a fat person. If somebody sees themselves as fat and they're about to eat an extra piece of cake, and some logical part of them says, well, you shouldn't do that, and there's this unconscious thought process that says, I'm fat. Well, this is how a fat person does their eating habits. They will eat second and a third slice. So again, the actions have a tremendous impact on, the thoughts have a tremendous impact on the action. And of course, the actions will impact the result. So eating that way produces the extra weight, which once again reinforces how we see ourselves, and then we have this cycle that continues and continues. Now, one of the problems with diets is that it focuses only on the action. It's telling you don't eat this and don't eat that, and it makes sense scientifically, but it has no connection to the thought process of where you're coming from. and therefore it's like fighting an uphill battle. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that. The thought process, in a sense, is like a domino effect. You know, this thought has a tremendous impact on actions and results. And when we're here, it's very difficult to turn it around. So the key is to have this lined up in the right place, the thought process. To give us another simple example of that, if we look at a sailboat, basically the sailboat you'll see has these rudders, and the rudders are what points us in the direction. Now, most of you, with all due respect, having this type of thought process and negative judgment about yourself is what leads to that chain reaction. So again, what we need to do is to change the direction by changing the thought process. Absolutely critical. And to get a little bit more involved in that requires something called self-awareness, being able to be noticing what is it that you're seeing about yourself when you look in the mirror. What dialogue is happening? Well, most of us are saying, I don't like this, or I don't like my stomach, or this looks bad, or so forth. And the truth is, that is our opinion, which we are creating. And we have a lot more control over that than we think. You know, I work with a young girl. She's about 19. She's a professional model, about 111 pounds, 5'8". And this woman was suicidal because she was 2 pounds overweight for the new fall season or what have you. Now, many of us would think there's something wrong with that. But really and truly, her thinking process about herself is what she chooses, but it's subconscious. So what I'm trying to point out to you is that you have a lot more control over your thinking. You need to be aware of it, and then you can begin to change that.
And so, Rob, does our thinking really, I mean, what you're saying makes sense, but I'm just having trouble imagining that our thinking can have that much of an impact on actual weight management.
Well, let's go back to that simple analogy, Corey. Let's say somebody's got an all-you-can-eat buffet, and, you know, it's really good food, and they're overweight, and there's some part of them that knows it and feels awful and kind of has somewhat given up hope and saying, you know, it's the summer, or I'm on holiday or vacation, I'll start my diet again next week or next month. It's very typical. Having that kind of a thought process will then fuel overeating. If a person is saying, I don't care, I'm fat anyways, I'm probably not going to lose this weight, I've tried so many times, that will obviously influence their action.
I see what you're saying.
So this is a critical thing to deal with. The next thing we want to look at is also quite important. This is about our relationship to food. Now, relationships, we have them with people and you know, pets and so forth. It's really about what we say about food and what we do with food. That's our relationship. So some of the inner dialogue that some of us may have are things like, I should lose weight, I should watch what I'm eating, I should start dieting, you know, restricting foods, eating secretly, guilt, and there's so many different things. Those types of patterns I very amorously call the diet mentality. And what ends up happening is dieting, depriving ourselves, restricting ourselves, actually does the opposite. It creates a rebel, sabotage, binging. Now, it may not happen right away. You know, people can be able to follow a plan for days, weeks, months, and so forth. But usually, if they kind of stray a little bit, they kind of go off the deep end. Because again, the mentality is, well, I've kind of blown it today, so I might as well, go to that all-you-can-eat and eat as much as I can, and I'll start again on Monday. And it becomes a vicious cycle. So this relationship to food, or the so-called diet mentality, has to change to a more neutral mentality, to change how you think about food. If you look at the average person who is not overweight, I guarantee you they don't have that same inner dialogue that you might. And it's very important to model the thinking of a slimmer person. You might as well think that way because they're obviously doing something right. So I want to give a little more of an analogy for this. Let's say you're in a bakery. Looks good. There's all these wonderful choices, and you're a child and you've been brought up in this environment, and you've gone into this bakery many, many times. You actually live above it in an apartment, and you can smell it, and it's great, and everything's wonderful. All of a sudden, one day, your family sits you down and says to you, we've been thinking a lot about it. You are no longer permitted into the bakery. You can't go in ever again. You can't have any sweets. We're going to hire a private detective to follow you around. You're barred. You're banned. If that were to occur, I know it's a little far-fetched, what do you think would happen to your desire for those sweets? Do you think it would go up or go down? Obviously,
well, I'm pretty sure it would go up.
Yeah. So what we're seeing again is that the whole dieting and depriving and restricting does the opposite. It creates the rebel, creates the part of us that wants even more. So using that same scenario, let's say your family's away and the baker's baking all these great cakes. There's a wedding. Everything's been paid for in advance, and at the last minute it's been canceled, and he's left with all of these cakes just fresh out of the oven, doesn't know what to do with it. He's about to actually throw it out, okay? And he sees you walking by, and he says to you, I'm about to throw this all in the garbage. It's waste. Nothing I can do about it. You can have as much as you want, but you can't tell anybody. This is a one-shot deal only. What happens? Once again, do we eat a little bit? Do we eat a lot? Well, most of us are probably going to eat as much as possible because
it's that one time.
Absolutely. And that's the similar model that the dieter has. They're restricted, they want it more, they use willpower, everything's great. One day they go to a party, they have something, they're off the deep end, they eat as much as they can because they know that, I've already blown it, and I'm going to start again tomorrow. So it feeds this sort of up and downness, and it's never ending. Now, the solution is to change the relationship with food. So let's say in this example that your family happens to, months later decide, okay, you're allowed back in, you're free. We've made a decision, we think we have acted improperly, and you can eat as much as you want whenever you want. You can go in, you can have a bite of cake, you can come in 5 minutes later, have another bite, you can bring in your friend, you can just, party on, have as much as you want whenever you want. Now initially, you may really overindulge because you've been deprived. However, what happens to our desire after a short period of time? Will it be the same? No, it'll obviously go down. It will not be the same as when we had that one-time opportunity because we've changed that psychology. There's no driving and burning urge to finish everything and do it all quickly because if we can go in 5 minutes, what's the point? So what begins to happen is our desire to overeat will just very naturally decrease. And it might be hard to imagine, but it does work. I've done this with hundreds and hundreds of people, and it does actually work. So what we're really trying to do is to recognize and respect this up and down pattern, and to realize that this diet system, does not work as a permanent solution, and to recognize it's really not your fault. You've bought into something that doesn't work. And so if you keep trying to diet, you'll be getting the same result. You know, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting something different. So it's not about trying a different diet. It's the same model. So recommended highly to stop that dieting and try a completely different approach, not just another diet. You're going to hear me say this a lot. You need to change the relationship with food. And I guarantee you, the moment you do that, your desire to overdo it will naturally decrease.
Rob, can I just ask, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just thinking, sometimes with diets we can have pretty immediate results, although not long-lasting. And maybe you're going to get to this later, but I'm just curious, how long does it take to change that relationship?
It doesn't take that long. You know, how long does it take for the person who's been restricted from the bakery, once they're let in there again, you know, how long does it take for them to not really feel like they need to binge every time they go in there? You know, maybe they will for a few days or a few weeks, but, you know, you take the person who works in a bakery, you know, when they first start working there, they, you know, really might overdo it, but after a bit of time, you know, whether it's days, weeks, it's no big deal anymore. I can't give you a specific amount of time, but it usually, you know, it's weeks, days, weeks, you know, depending on the individual. And it does require, once again, monitoring one's inner dialogue. How are we relating to food?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the next strategy we want to look at is increasing your awareness. Now, there's a number of different types of awareness. The first one is very simple, hunger awareness. So simply by checking in to be aware in the moment, am I truly hungry? You know, oftentimes I can recall in the past, you know, I'd be in a movie theater with a large bag of popcorn in my lap, and somewhere through the movie, I'm noticing my hands at the bottom of the bag, and I'm like, wow, did I eat all of that? So we're mindlessly eating. So if we check in, you know, if my partner sitting beside me, you know, 3/4 through the bag would say, hey, are you still hungry? And I'd say, not really. I may not want to finish it. I may want to, but at least, you know, there's something in my corner helping me to realize I'm not really hungry. And so that alone sometimes will short-circuit mindless eating. Not all the time. But it's very simple. And again, through repetition, it becomes a new neural pathway, and it, you know, might reduce our eating 10, 20% of the time, which is fantastic, because it's not a diet strategy. It's something that we can maintain easily for the rest of our lives. Now, if we recognize that we're not hungry, but we still want to eat, the next step is to say, okay, well, what's going on here? It's not that I can't eat because I'm not on a diet. How do I feel physically or emotionally? You know, what's the real benefit here of eating other than the taste? You know, many of us say, well, it's just there, and it's, you know, which is probably not the case, because if it's important to lose weight and we're having a second and third piece of cake, there's something driving it. There's some kind of benefit that's coming out of it. We may not even know. But if we are aware, if we can say, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit stressed, or I had a long day of work, I deserve a reward, or I just want to feel good, or whatever's going on. Again, we break that pattern of mindless eating, and oftentimes we may not want to eat just simply because we're aware, we're not hungry, we're stressed. Food isn't the answer. We may eat something and 10 minutes later we're still stressed. You know, I know for myself, I have this connection to pizza. Pizza represents fun for me. So sometimes I may order or think of ordering a pizza, and my mind says, you know, I'm not really hungry. I just want to have some fun. And sometimes I'll order it, and sometimes I won't, and that's okay. So increasing awareness is an extremely valuable part of us, to be able to, you know, stop the unknown. factor that's just driving us. So the solution then is to duplicate these positive feelings that food gives us, whether it's comfort or instant gratification, and to actually eliminate these messages, subconscious messages in our mind that are triggering the unhealthy eating. We're not really aware of it. It's not as if, most of us are feeling stressed and we're saying, I'm stressed, what should I do? Well, maybe I should go have some cake, or maybe, no, it happens so automatically because of repetition. So one of the other strategies around that is to be able to learn to actually clear the mind, to stop sending these messages to eat too much or to eat unhealthy, and to feel more content and at peace. So if any of these stressful moments are occurring, we're able to release those and therefore not be so driven to eat. Now, easier said than done. Why is it that we can't be consistently content and at peace and not have these messages? Well, obviously there's things going on in our life, our home, work, relationships, things that really rock our world. So if we look at the desired outcome of being content and at peace with none of these messages to eat poorly within our mind, and I'm going to use this round sphere, the sun, to represent this as an analogy. And if we look at the sun, it's in the sky 24 hours a day. And if we ask that question, why isn't it consistently sunny? The answer is pretty obvious. There are clouds in the sky. Now, what I'm going to say now may be the most powerful thing I can tell you. The only thing that is actually stopping you from experiencing being content and at peace are your thoughts and your feelings. Now, you may have these relationship issues or work or finances or whatever we all have going on. But it's how we react to those. It's how we think about those that is blocking our ability to just be peaceful. Same way the sun is blocking, the clouds are blocking the sun. The interesting thing for me is that on the rainiest, cloudiest day of the year, the sun continues to shine. We can't see it, but it's always sunny. And in the same fashion, you are always at peace and content. Unfortunately, our thoughts and our feelings distract us from that. And so oftentimes we'll even use food to distract ourselves from some of these thoughts and feelings. And it works very, very well. So what can we do about this? Well, if we go back to the cloud analogy, let's say we have this giant wind machine, and it's capable of exerting a tremendous amount of energy to blow these clouds consistently away all the time. Now, if that were real, if we can always have the power to blow away these clouds every second of every day, then what will end up happening is it will always be sunny. I know it's unrealistic, but that's what would happen. And using that same model, if we can let go of our thoughts and the feelings that prevent us from this calmness, if we can do it consistently, then we're going to experience a lot more calmness and contentment, and we won't be driven to food. We won't have those messages. So that's what we're actually aiming for. We want to learn how to let go of unwanted thoughts and feelings and to release any of the messages. And again, when we do that, we are left with just pure simplicity. Now, it's not always going to work, but it allows us to have a tremendous amount of control over our thoughts and feelings and let them go. The key is consistency. Okay? Now, how do we do this? Well, the good thing is there is a release mechanism that we were all born with. It's in our mind. And this is a ability to take your focus off of one thing and automatically put it onto something else. Okay? So give you a simple example of that. Let's say you're watching a TV show, a hockey game, and you really don't like it. It's violent or something like that. It produces some unwanted feeling. You take your TV converter and you simply, in one split second, push the button. Your focus is taken off of that hockey game, and maybe now you're watching another show. And instantly, the focus is off of the TV show that caused you, the anger or the frustration, and you're on to something else. The release mechanism. Right now, you people are listening or watching. If your fire alarm went off in your house, you would immediately take the focus off of what I'm saying and put it on to going out. Now, that's something that's built in. So the way the mind clearing works is what we do is we actually take that release mechanism and we attach it to a function that occurs all the time, such as breathing. Now, when we do that, the way it will end up working is that every time you take a breath, you will activate the release mechanism and release the thought or feeling that's in the way of being peaceful and just content and message-free. All it will take is a breath. And the beauty of it is you breathe moment by moment by moment, and therefore you're releasing the messages in your mind to eat poorly or letting go of the unwanted thoughts and feelings moment by moment by moment. Now this becomes automatic because you're automatically breathing, and you learn to attach that release mechanism to your breath. So each breath, you'll let go of a thought. Each breath, you'll let go of another thought. So it's continuously releasing. And again, what ends up happening is you're left with nothing except just peace. It's a wonderful feeling. I invite you all to experience more of it, and I'm sure that you do. The key is consistency. If you can experience this peace in each breath, I guarantee you'll be less driven to eat for emotional reasons, and if you can let go of these unwanted messages to eat poorly, there's no more struggle with dieting and so forth. So I'm noticing by the clock that we're kind of counting down, and I'd like to just do a little summary here of some of these techniques and tips that I'm happy to share with you. So what we want to do is change that program that says, I'll just eat this now and, start again tomorrow. The more we repeat it, the more we do it. We definitely want to strengthen the belief system about success, about the possibility that you can succeed. I mean, anything's possible. You may not believe that you will, but your belief is just your belief. It's not the absolute truth. And then we want to change our thoughts and perceptions of how we see ourselves, because, again, that triggers a whole chain reaction. We want to change our relationship with food. We want to let go of diet mentality. And we definitely want to learn to clear the mind of these feelings and these thoughts that are driving and triggering this unwanted eating. Now, there's obviously more, but I wish I could spend a little bit more time. I want to do with you guys a very simple 1-minute exercise. And I suggest that you try to maybe let go of your focus and close your eyes for a moment if you're not comfortable with that. You don't have to, but it will work a little better. Take a couple of breaths and just respond from your heart. Are you really ready to lose this weight for good? What are 3 benefits that you would get out of that? How would your life be any better? What would be different? 3 things, or as many as you can think of. And do you really and truly want it? Are you sure about it? Do you feel that you deserve it?
Rob, those are very powerful analogies and techniques that you've been talking about. And for myself, I think it would, I definitely would need to learn more. And so I'm curious if you could just tell us a little bit more. If somebody wants to work with you privately, how exactly does that work?
Well, the first process, began to describe it briefly, is the awareness mapping, okay? And this is to really, really uncover the underlying reasons that drive you to eat. It's absolutely critical to know those. Otherwise, you're just relying on willpower. So the awareness mapping is about a 2-hour session or a 90-minute session that we do together over the phone, and it allows me to lead you through that process, okay, and to have a very clear understanding of, what is your domino effect? What's going on underneath, on the real underlying levels? What are your triggers? What's really stopping you from breaking through and being able to lose the weight? And it's not about another diet or so forth. As you've maybe noticed through my little demonstrations here, there's a lot more going on. So that's something that needs to be done, and we do that in this awareness mapping. Then once we know that, I'd show people different types of techniques to change the relationship with food, again, specifically designed for them, because, I've spoken a bit of generalities tonight. And then, again, we want to be able to learn how to use the power of the mind. That's where this is all coming from, okay? So the awareness mapping session is, as you mentioned, it's a private session with me. We can do it either on the phone or in person. I do appointments either in the daytime or the evening, Monday to Friday. And whoever feels motivated, if they're ready, we're here to help.
Thank you, Rob. I'm curious, you've said this yourself, this is a significant shift away from the diet mentality. What is your success rate?
That's a good question, Corey. It's, I want to be really straightforward with that. Everybody's different. I have no guarantees for anybody, but I can tell you, the people who've come to see me have not been successful in the past with diets, and I do not take the dieting approach. If someone is looking for a strict, rigid, good diet, this is not the place to find it. So make that clear. If a person has the willingness to spend, the 90 minutes or more with me, and to really be open enough to understand what's really stopping them, and to look at strategies to really break through, and to end the frustration of dieting and of being overweight. If a person's truly willing and open to do that in that 90-minute session, success rate is extraordinarily high. So much so that we actually offer a guarantee. If at the end of the session, if you're not totally satisfied for whatever reason, we do a complete refund within 24 hours.
Wow, that speaks volumes in itself. Rob, I'm sure there's many people out there that are very curious. What is the actual cost of an awareness mapping session with you?
At the current time, the professional fees for the awareness mapping is $295. That's the regular fee. Right now we do have a special. We're doing various types of information gathering for websites and so forth. So if anybody is willing to do a survey after the session, the survey takes about 15 minutes or so, then the price would drop significantly to $95. And should they decide they want to do that, we accept all forms of payment, as well as debit cards, PayPal, credit cards, and so forth. And if anybody wants to move forward, I really welcome you, and you can register right now at 1-866-791-7546. If you prefer to do that online, you can do it at www.coachrobsugar, all one word, .com. And it's 100% secure payments online there. Now, I'm going to leave this registration information up on the screen, and before we end the call, I'm just going to repeat the phone number for those of you who are just on the phone. So I really, really want to thank everybody for being present, and for Dave, our host, and Corey, our facilitator. And I'm really, really grateful to have you on the line, and I wish you all well. Good night. I've been asked to repeat the phone number again for those of you who are just listening. It's 1-866-791-7546, and the website is www.coachrobsugar.com. Thank you again.